Good morning. It's quite ironic, I think, that we're organizing this conference 5 days after the UK decided to pull out of the EU. We're talking today about demolishing walls, boundaries, the importance to do that, to thrive in the future, while the UK has decided to build one big wall across the continent. You might also be wondering why an editor of an institution in Malta is moderating this first session. Sometimes Times of Malta is considered to be conservative. It's been there for 81 years. So why should an editor be moderating? Very simple. We acknowledge the need to change. We acknowledge that today the competition is no longer the other local news organizations, but the big social media companies out there, the Facebook and Twitters of this world. But we also realize that the competition is that small website which has just come on stream, run by a 20-year-old from his house in Burmarat. That's the reality, and that is the competition. Financial competition, and even from a news perspective, with the onset of citizen journalism. So we're also realizing that we're in the situation that unless we change, it doesn't matter if you've been 81 years in the business. We've seen far bigger companies go down the drain because they refuse to change. So let's start off with something a bit different. We got a few comments from Joseph Calleja. Joseph Calleja is the world-renowned tenor. He's probably our best export. Joseph is, is a tenor. He's young, pretty bubbly guy, and he's also operates in an industry, in an opera scene, which is, let's face it, it's been there forever, and it's not exactly known to be the most innovative industry. So I sat down with Joseph last week to ask him, how do you make yourself stand out in such an industry? Let's watch this clip. Joseph, how do you remain competitive in an industry which is pretty tough and pretty competitive at the top?
Mm-hmm. It's a question of course, you have to have the talent and all the building blocks to arrive there. Then it's a question of being, rather than independent, inter-independent, with a group of people, with a team around you, that you create trust, you create synergy, and you create a situation where you feed off with, or better still, you feed off the other's knowledge, the other's energy, the other's positive thoughts, and the others, in many cases, especially since we're talking about the arts, constructive criticism.
The criticism, it hasn't always gone your way, though.
The thing is this, that I was one that always preferred to be saved by criticism rather than ruined by praise. And that is a dictum that I always adhered to, because the arts is something very subjective. The arts, it is a luxury, and with a luxury, it's like very much like a fine wine. If you're in the economies of scale, if you charge the audience a certain price of tickets to come and hear one of the best tenors in the world, in my case, then you have to sound, behave and perform like one of the best tenors in the world. Io son l'indoro che ti do e v'adoro, che sposa vi bramo, che a nome vi chiamo. You're talking about the arts, an art scene which has been going on for decades, centuries, we can say. Mm-hmm. How do you remain innovative in an industry which has been going on for so many years? Can you actually be original? You can be original in the sense that you use today's tools that are pretty new. I mean, social media, Enrico Caruso, even Pavarotti didn't have Twitter and Facebook and these things. These are rather very quite new. What is it, a decade? Here, and I mean, approximately, maybe 15 years. And using social media to engage with one's audience is pretty much a new thing. I mean, this didn't used to happen. I mean, nowadays you can message an actor, a singer, a musician personally. Whether he replies or not, or whether he has a team to reply is another question. But many of them do have a team around them that they engage the audience and they reach them with social media. It started really with the website, but with Twitter. I mean, today I was tweeting. I was going through the tweets of Hugh Jackman, and even some major Hollywood stars are completely and very active with it and engaging new audiences all the time.
Social media can be an asset. It can also be poisonous, though. You need to be very careful how to manage it.
My rule is to never put anything out there on social media that I wouldn't be comfortable to still face it 20 years down the line. It is really, you have to really be quiet to project what's going to happen, to project who you're going to be in 20 years time, and not to put every single thing, every single picture that I put on social media. I'm very careful, and when I made mistakes, I try to backtrack and to delete some of the stuff that I wasn't happy with.
You're at the top of your game. You're known as one of the world's best tenors today. What's your advice to somebody out there still starting off?
First of all, you have to conceive it. You have to first believe it here, and then after you believe it there, then you have to sing it here, and then you have to do it in front of hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of people, sometimes even up to millions. Even in singing technique, we say that one of the rules is to think the note before you sing it. And that's probably the same thing in a new business, in a new venture, in a new idea. You have to first conceive it, have literally a mission, plan it out, write out what you're going to do. Your targets, what's important, what can wait, what is indispensable, what is not indispensable. Because sometimes, it is often the case that people, miss the woods for the trees, and that happens as well in business, and happens as well in the arts, in singing and everything.
Okay, that's Joseph Calleja breaking all the rules of opera during the last night of the proms 3 years ago. He's underlining the need for stamina, for innovation in a sector where, it's very difficult to bring about change. But in reality, maybe I'll start off with you, Reinhold. Is any industry safe from technological disruption?
For sure, not.
For sure not.
For sure, not. It's just a matter of time, but for sure, not. Even not the GP, not medical guy in any sense, no driver, no pilot, no industry will be safe. Even no chef, no cook, no one.
Nobody, absolutely
No.
nobody.
No.
Okay, so let's start off with what's the most important thing for success then? Are we talking about your employees, the funding, the idea, or maybe the timing? Mike?
So I think the most important is execution. So I talk about people, it's execution. I don't think ideas are, let me put it a different way, there's tons of ideas out there. There's many people who have brilliant ideas, but the harsh reality is that the execution in 99% of cases is either absent or lacking, and that's very few that execute very, very efficiently that are going to, reach above the noise. So it's execution and it's timing. At the end of the day, there's also brilliant ideas with brilliant execution that are simply timing-wise off. So if you combine the two, that's a recipe for success.
Is it all about the timing? Okay.
There's actually an interesting study done with, I think, 200 startups done by a VC. I think it's a TED Talk. 100 of them he had invested in, 100 he had not invested in. And they analyzed which were the factors which had the biggest impact. Number one was timing and execution. So number two was people. So it was interesting to see, like, idea was like number 4 or something. So I think it's all about timing, having the right people, investing in the right people.
Reinhold?
In my opinion, execution is absolutely right, but even more important is the leadership. Because you need to have, as an entrepreneur, your vision, you need to know where you want to go. You will face so many different circumstances you never expected. So you have to execute, but you have to come over every barrier which is in the way. So you need to have leadership. You have to convince your people, your customers, and so on. So for me, it's leadership and execution.
Short story about Reinhold. I'm sure he's going to be talking about it later. Reinhold was a very successful businessman until 2007, when he realized his business partner was not exactly the nicest guy on earth, and basically he went bust. Reinhold lost 70 million in money, in funding, and 30 million in assets. That was 10 years ago. Today, Reinhold is a huge success once again. So he went from rags to riches, to rags, and yet again to riches. I'm sure people want to hear how you managed to do that.
Hopefully, I will talk about that as well. But I want especially to address even more and more a big problem which we have in continental Europe. It's also existing in China and so on, but continental Europe. You know, the rule is that 9 out of 10 startups fail in average. But it's not just startups. What is the average age of the European companies? It's just 12 years. Nobody realized that. So we see every year a lot of failing entrepreneurs in different ways, but no one is taking care about them. And we still have in continental Europe medieval insolvency laws and rules, and so no one is helping them getting over. And if they're not exactly good statistics, but it seems that just 1% recovers, meaning to start again later on in a company and becoming successful, but 99 are not. And this 99%, a lot of them make suicide, get sick, are broken marriage. They are just done, you know. And if this would be the same like in America, we wouldn't see Bill Gates because he failed 3 times before he was successful, or the PayPal guys and so on. So that's about a story I'm talking about.
Actually, to build on this, I think I completely agree. I mean, one thing actually I think which is amazing what we've done in relatively short amount of time is just the risk averseness. I mean, Europe used to be very, very conservative. I mean, I grew up in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands, you know, I mean, it's not like Japan, but we were very kind of like risk-taking is not necessarily something that's encouraged, even though we are a trading nation, right? And you see, we have this saying in the Netherlands that goes, act normal, you already act crazy enough, right? Which is not, it's not a great saying for entrepreneurship. And if you look at the last 10 years, I mean, the difference is incredible in Europe. And I think the whole, the whole lean startup movement, the hype around startups has contributed to education, has contributed to like just experimenting, trying out, and nowadays everybody wants to become a startup. Now the next problem, and that's exactly what you were saying, is what people don't realize is how hard it is, right? And I think the problem here is it's this nice ideal of being your own boss, but the reality is you work day and night. You don't sleep on the weekends because you have bad dreams. You wake up with nightmares because you think, am I going to make it on Monday? It's hard. I know many friends of mine who are depressed. Like outside they look great, they're always enthusiastic, but then indoors, they struggle. And they don't know whether they want to keep doing this. And I think building support networks actually for, just helping people and just getting this message out is going to be very important as well.
One person who doesn't seem to be struggling, at least for the time being, is David. He runs Hotjar, which is a pretty successful company, running on 300,000, I think, a month, 13% growth every month.
Yeah, tremendous growth.
But you guys work in it's a completely remote company. I was talking to a colleague of yours yesterday. He said you've got 18 employees around the world. And the first time you met all 18 was recently in Malta. How does that work?
We haven't met them all yet, actually.
Exactly.
No, actually, and to the point about failure, we failed 2 times before Hotjar as well. As in, it's good. We are experiencing success now, but we went through the tough times, 2 years of hell of nothing working. And so in a way, it's super important to be able to fail in order to understand what success is. But yeah, in terms of people-wise, we're doing things a little bit different. I worked in a firm before Hotjar, which was remote, and I fell in love with it, and I realized there was no way I was going to work non-remote ever again, and I wanted to share that with other people. So we decided very early on that we'd embrace a remote culture. So although we were like 4 or 5 people here in Malta, we lived a few kilometers. How big is Malta, right? But we were still working remotely with each other. So that then as we brought in people from the US, from Portugal, from Sweden, they'd not feel left out. And the reason why we did this is we realized, again, leadership, people. It is key to be at the top of the game, to build an A-class team. And we knew being in Malta, we could not take the risk of only relying on bringing people to Malta or the people available in Malta.
How do you keep tabs, though? How do you keep tabs?
You don't. That's the key. You embrace the fact that you don't. So you need to only bring in people that you feel you can trust. People are self-starters. We've made our recruitment a science nearly. So we've put probably more energy into our recruitment process than other companies have put into their sales funnel. So it's a 6-7 step process, I think, which is evolving with multiple checks. And so it's determining culture fit, people we can trust, and we still get it wrong, obviously.
You mentioned culture. I was talking to a colleague of yours yesterday who said sometimes they need to be in line with our way of thinking, with our culture. Is that more important than their skills, technological skills in your field?
Yeah, so that was Mark, yeah. So we actually don't believe in skills. We believe in mindsets, because skills can be learned. We know that for a fact. So mindset, culture, if they think the way we think, we hire for potential.
Is it more important than knowledge then? Mike, do you agree with this line of thinking?
Depends. Depends on the stage of a company, right? In his stage, I agree. I definitely agree. But the problem is that at a certain point, skills become more and more important. And it's skills. It's not about like only very specific skills like coding, etc. It's also about just experience. I think the problem we have also in Europe is once we scale a company and goes bigger, we simply do not have access to the right executives that can take the company to the next level, because we have limited experience of people who have scaled a company from 1,000 to 10,000 people, for instance. I mean, that's also a problem. Again, something you don't right now have to worry about. But I completely agree with the mindset is so much more important in the beginning. And it's so important. The first hires are critical, like a make or break of a company.
Let's move on to digital. I mean, we all have these great dreams about, that's why we're all here about digital. But will digital solve everything, Reinhold?
No, it will also create a lot of problems. So, for example, I'm really worried about the whole robotic thing, because it's just that wrong how we think it will develop. Because if we let the smart machines and robots be developed like the technology will allow us, we will just create a useless class of humans, and we will get enormous problems. So it's just stupid to think that everyone can become someone with an IQ over 120 and or a poet or a thinker or an Einstein. We also need normal jobs for normal people, and here we are in the wrong line already, in the wrong road, so we have to do something against it, and I hope we will realize it not too late, because when it's too late, then we get really big troubles between maybe different folks.
Mike, in your presentation, you said there are disruptive developments which you fear can be harmful. I'd like to expand on this, because we all seem to get all this romantic idea about all the developments. What is the most harmful development you're seeing out there at the moment?
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, the scary thing is there's so many of them, right? Honestly, I'm very, very surprised how little has happened. If I look at a global scale and how much you could imagine could happen, how little has happened. So that's good so far. But if you look at now, what worries me the most is we've built a global network that essentially means we can access anything instantly, right? And on top of this, we are connected like physically, right? We travel all over the world. So also talk about diseases, which is a side topic here, but everything is interconnected, which means whatever happens now has a global impact, much, much more so than in the past. And when we talk about artificial intelligence, when people start launching stuff in the internet and we don't know exactly what the behavior is going to be like, that's a problem. When we build robots, and we're going to start using them for military use, etc., and we automate everything, this could lead to problems, right? It's all about us trying to make things simpler, but actually we develop stuff we don't really understand. And one good also analogy was about the Cold War that someone made, was saying back then when it was about launching nuclear missiles, still the president would have to actually call, and it was a human in that silo who had to press that button. And just this human factor of someone who has to press a button to launch a nuclear missile, that could delay, right, and be actually the decision point of global war, or killing a lot of people or not. Automating everything means all those decisions will be removed. The human decisions will be removed from that chain, and that's dangerous.
That's the problem. But if I may add, what me worries at the moment is already, because there's a big danger already here and no one realizes, are the nanomaterials. Fantastic technology, it seems, but for the first use case, they are just great. But if you dispose them, it's a huge problem. We will see a disaster in 30, 40 years, because there are no techniques that you can collect this materials back, because that material is manipulated on the atoms. So if they go in the environment, in our body, you just can't get rid of them again. And the damage will be so harmful. But I think no one of even the politicians is understanding what's going on here. So technology is not just digital, which is dangerous, but also this kind of new technologies like the nanomaterials.
The rubble theory, where they said they're essentially reproducing, right, nanorobots, but if we kind of regulate this, that means they will go reproducing exponentially and consume everything, right?
Yep.
That's something that could happen.
What is the next wave of the internet?
In my opinion, or in many opinions, the next wave of the internet is the blockchain technology. So internet was the first digital medium for exchange of information. And this blockchain technology, which underlays, for example, Bitcoin and so on, is a trust machine. And this will be the next digital medium for exchanging values. And for sure this will be a big change in the internet architecture as well.
Mike?
I mean, it's hard to say next, because at the end of the day, it's all those things in parallel, right? The Internet of Things, all those devices, sensors connected, which are changing the internet, right? I mean, it's expanding, you could argue, to all the physical stuff we do. So blockchain is definitely one very powerful enabler, but I think what's really interesting is to see the shift again from online to offline, and the impact the internet has had increasing way in our offline behavior.
What will the next 5 years look like in this scene?
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I knew that. Then I'd be a very rich guy. I think to kind of build on what we were saying before, I think there is going to be quite a shift to a more human internet, a more qualitative internet. Personal assistance is like an example of that. So far, everything has been relatively binary, right? You want something, you don't want something. You chose something, you didn't choose something. I think there's this qualitative nature of things becoming more complex, where e-commerce sites, for example, are no longer you bought something or you didn't, but it's more this customization, adaptation to us. I think that as humans who are super qualitative, I think it's interesting to see that we're finally moving to a stage where, as I said, there is artificial intelligence and there is that adaptation, but there is also this adaptation of services and companies to a more qualitative nature. It's something that I'm actually going to talk about later on.
So what are the next things to watch out for? This is a final question to the three of you.
So my turn. First of all, I think in the next 5 years we will see we are also already entering the post-app area. So these virtual assistants will arise for sure. There are predictions that in 5 years' time, 40% of the users will have forgotten apps, about apps. So there are 100,000 of new things to watch out. So it's not easy to say, take care of this and this, but the big picture for me is we have to get it right, the algorithm technologies, the robots, and the nanomaterials. That are the dangerous sides. All the others is fine and will be just exciting as it was in the last time, but the base is, growing and growing and growing.
I mean, I talked about this in the presentation, right? I mentioned this, but I think talk about the virtual assistants, I think one interesting thing that you see right now is that we use channels like WhatsApp to order stuff. You know, it's essentially chat that we use to order merchandise, that we go, help desk, and we're engaging increasingly so with bots, not with humans. So people don't know this, but like you're going to like a help desk via WhatsApp asking questions, it's a bot answering your questions, up until the point that the bot cannot answer anymore, switches to human, and you will never know. You will never know. That's already out there right now. And they talk about the future of personal assistants that are going to be more sophisticated.
I started off the presentation by saying, I work for an institution, untouchable. So many, people see it that way at least. But I also perceive this thing, unless we change, we die. Am I being too pessimistic there?
No.
Very realistic. Very realistic.
On that note, thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.